I've been with Shane for 8 years. On the eve of our wedding, I caught him marrying his first love. I didn't cry or make a scene. Everything went on as scheduled. On the wedding day, I bought trending hashtags and flaunted their love story. But the fiancé who got his wish ended up going mad. In the updated blessing video at the wedding hotel, the name of my fiancé, Shane, appeared. Right beside him, there was also a very familiar-looking girl, Ruojia. The large red festive scroll made me freeze for a moment. These two names were just too much of a coincidence. I called Shane, and it rang for a long time before he answered. "I'm in a business meeting, I'll call you back later." But I heard the voice from the other end of the phone saying, "Please welcome the bride and groom." His job has nothing to do with the wedding industry. After leaving yesterday, he said he was going on a business trip for 2 weeks. He would return just in time to marry me. Now. I pressed the accelerator all the way to the destination. The electronic screen was scrolling with congratulatory messages for the newlyweds. I put on a mask and said I was there for the banquet. Soon, a waiter escorted me into a private room. On stage exchanging rings is none other than my fiancé, Shane. "Ruojia, I swear that for the rest of my life, whether in poverty or wealth, I will forever be your steadfast support." Whistles erupted from the audience. Familiar friends shouted, "Kiss her." With teary eyes, Ruojia threw herself into his embrace. A deep, lingering kiss made even the host erupt with excitement. There weren't many people present. Basically, Shane's close buddies whom I've seen before, and some friends from Ruojia's side. I took advantage of the chaotic scene and quietly slipped into a corner. The two of them went through all the formalities. By the time they sat down, Ruojia was a bit tipsy. Shane held her tightly, a smile in his eyes. Friends teased them. "Oh my, it's been 10 years and you two are still so sweet together. Why don't you just make it real? We're all witnesses here." That's right, that's right. You've been longing for her for so long. Since Ruojia is back now, why force yourself to marry Rome? Soon, others chimed in. Their faces flushed from the alcohol, they spoke without restraint. Shane suddenly bent down and kissed Ruojia's hand, showing off a little. "Same hotel, but I married you first, and now our regrets have been made up." Immediately, someone chimed in, "So, what's the honeymoon plan? Do you want us to tag along as third wheels?" Shane laughed and waved them off, "Go on, get out of here. The destination's been set for ages. Cover for me around Rome, don't let her find out." Cough, what are you afraid of? What if she does find out? Worst case, we just don't get married. A friend teased leisurely. He and Shane grew up together as close as brothers. Upon learning of our engagement, his first reaction was one of surprise. What about Ruojia? The topic was quickly brushed aside at the time, and I never dwelled on it. Ruojia, as the beloved of their group since childhood, is always favored in their hearts, no matter how well these friends pretend to be welcoming toward me. Ruojia laughed and playfully hit him, "Don't say nonsense. Shane has already met my parents. I can't ruin their relationship." My heart tightened instantly. How could she have the nerve to say such hypocritical words? Shane looked at her deeply, as if she were a treasure. "If you're willing, I can call off the engagement." Wow. The cheers around them grew louder and louder. Ruojia shyly buried her head in Shane's chest. No one noticed my presence. They continued discussing their future travel plans in detail. I listened, my fingernails digging deeper into my skin. Before today, I had always believed I was the happiest woman alive. Shane was successful in his career, gentle and considerate toward me, and never lost his temper. Even both sets of parents were very satisfied with us. Our lives seemed destined for a happily ever after ending. But now, I am not so sure. When Shane texted me back, they were likely at the hotel. His reply was short and blunt, "Busy, talk later." It wasn't until I was on my way that I suddenly realized how strangely perfunctory Shane had been with me for the past few days. The word he said to me the most was busy. He hadn't even replied to the message I sent him the day before about wedding dresses. I always thought he was busy preparing for the wedding. To be precise, he was indeed busy preparing, but unfortunately, the person he was preparing for wasn't me. No wonder he was so eager to confirm the wedding arrangements and props over the phone recently. When I overheard his calls, my heart still leaped with excitement. Look, my fiancé is so devoted to the wedding, he's just too busy, that's all. I convinced myself and accepted his indifference. But reality undoubtedly dealt me a harsh blow. His social media profile describes it as a grand wedding is needed to make up for the regrets of youth. When I pressed for more details, he said he wanted to prepare an unforgettable wedding for me. I believed him, rising from obscurity to a high position. This was what I deserved all along. Yet this anticipation ultimately turned into disappointment. From the very beginning, Shane was lying to me. I finally understood why Shane was so emotional that day half a year ago. His social media post says, "Finally, I'm going to wait for you." The diamond ring revealed in the picture is meant for proposing to me. I once wondered when we had taken this set of photos together. Shane teased me for not being attentive, and I felt guilty. Looking back now, the diamond ring is the same because Shane didn't want Ruojia to feel treated unfairly. My stomach churned with a wave of overwhelming nausea. Tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. I swept everything in sight onto the floor. It wasn't enough, shattering those $1 million vases did nothing to soothe the rage boiling inside me. As I stormed through the house, I realized it was littered with remnants of the love Shane and I once shared. Each one seemed to mock my foolishness. I snatched up the blankets, tore down the stuffed animals, and stuffed the matching couple's clothes into the trash bin. Amid the flurry of cleaning up the mess, my mind slowly began to reboot. Simply breaking up was too easy for this scumbag couple. I had to make sure their wedding became a spectacle everyone remembered. I packed up all my belongings, called a moving company, and hauled everything back to my parents' house. My parents were stunned when they saw me. He went ahead and married someone else. I described the incident matter-of-factly. My father slammed the table, ready to go confront him, but I stopped him. I'll let the chaos unfold later, it'll be much more entertaining. Then I called my teacher again. "Teacher, you don't need to attend my wedding during the National Day holiday. Oh, by the way, is it still possible to sign up for that training opportunity we discussed last time?" I felt a bit embarrassed asking that. But when I got a positive response, my heart leaped with joy. The further studies require going to City A, and the distance is simply too far. Considering my marriage with Shane, I don't want it to turn into a long-distance relationship. However, this is very beneficial for the future development of my art studio, as I can get to know many industry bigwigs. My teacher was somewhat disappointed in me back then, but now that stone has finally hit the ground, I began preparing for my further studies. Painting has always been something I enjoy for relaxation. After being stirred up by Shane, only painting can lift my spirits. The teacher was pleased with my finished piece. "Keep this up, you're sure to achieve great things in the future." 3 days later, I received an active call from Shane. "Rong, what are you up to? It's been days since you sent me a message?" It was quite noisy on his end, probably at a restaurant. I gave a forced smile and replied, "Same old issue, I'm hospitalized and need surgery." The other end hesitated for a moment and asked if it was serious. "Well, I might need to be hospitalized for over 10 days, I paused and asked, "Will you come back to see me?" My heart suddenly grew tense, and my palms were sweating. I didn't even know what I was doing. I've always despised the tactic of feigning illness to gain sympathy, but I still wanted to hear him say he'd be willing to come back. After these 2 days, I'll be back." Ruaja's voice cut him off. "Who are you calling? The tide is coming in." Shane quickly hung up. I shook my head with a bitter smile. I had mentioned long ago that I wanted to go to the seaside together. Shane always said he was busy and had no time. I kept delaying it, but now I've taken Ruaja to have it done. I waited 2 more days before Shane finally transferred me some money. I'm really busy, can't make it back. Of course I knew he was busy. On the day I crashed into his wedding, a girl with the same profile picture as mine added me. I noticed we have the same profile picture, what a coincidence. Unfortunately, because it's a matching avatar, Shane insisted I change it. I knew that girl was Ruojia, but I didn't point it out. Her social media feed was constantly updating. She had French food with Shane, watched the sunset, galloped across the riding grounds. These honeymoon plans I stayed up late outlining ended up serving as a wedding dress for someone else. I closed my eyes, feeling like I've been overusing them lately. It's utterly miserable. When I woke up, the hotel had sent me a reply. With the power of money, I obtained all the surveillance footage. My parents fended off the relatives on Shane's side on my behalf. I channeled my grief and anger into work. I worked on sketch after sketch, from dawn till dusk, until I developed tenosynovitis in my hand. Fortunately, the results didn't betray my efforts. I successfully secured a spot and could set sail next week. Heartbreak in love must not be allowed to lead to a setback in one's career. Shane returned home the day before the wedding. He looked at the empty house and called me with questions. "You're on a long business trip, right?" I moved in with my parents for a while. I wanted to spend more time with them while I still can before marriage. Shane didn't question it further. He sounded tired as he reminded me of some things to keep in mind and soon fell into a deep sleep. I was so excited that I didn't sleep all night. I took a nap in the morning and didn't wake up until 10 o'clock. Shane didn't come to pick me up for the wedding. The wedding company called several times, but I didn't answer any of them. They were getting anxious over there. "Could you please let us know how the wedding will be arranged today? The banquet is about to begin, and we haven't been able to get in touch with the groom either." My heart sank involuntarily. Even though I had already decided not to get married, being abandoned by him again still made my heart ache. 8 years of relationship, countless whispered "I love you" day and night, couldn't even get him to look properly at this wedding? I curved my lips and called his friend. The other hesitated. "Shane had a minor accident on the way. Wait a bit longer, he'll be here soon." Shane's parents also called to apologize, offering an extra $500,000 for the bridal dowry. I sneered, "No need. Look at the big screen, the wedding is about to begin. Money talks." The hotel manager was willing to risk the consequences of projecting the surveillance footage for the sake of temptation. I could guess just how shocked the expressions of all the guests in attendance would be. Within 10 minutes, my phone and my parents' phones were already flooded with calls. Relatives from my side and Shane's side started fighting. Shane's parents were about to worry themselves sick, sending voice messages one after another. "Future in-laws, don't believe all that nonsense. We'll definitely bring that idiot over to apologize." I stretched lazily, watching as the online buzz began to heat up. Various trending topics, fueled by money, took turns dominating the hot searches. Shocking. A man ran away from his wedding for his first love, abandoning his fiancée after 8 years of dating. On the wedding day, the groom takes his first love to the hospital? A man marries twice at the same time. Now, Shane and Ruojia are completely famous. The touching love witnessed by the entire internet is exactly what they wanted. I leisurely made my way to the hotel with my parents. Shane's parents were trembling, their lips quivering as they urged everyone not to believe the media's wild speculations. No matter how well they treated me, they would always side more with their own son. In public, the Shane family cares about saving face. All those brothers were there, heads bowed, glued to their phones, probably sending messages to Shane. When I arrived, everyone's expressions grew even more tense. Shane's mother anxiously pulled me aside, offering endless apologies and explanations, making promises more extravagant than the sky itself. I watched their performance with a cold gaze, noticing that each of them had their own hidden motives, their expressions revealing a variety of emotions. Amidst the chaos, Shane burst in. According to the normal procedure, at this time I should be toasting with him. Dressed in proper groom attire, he came toward me with swift steps. "Wrong, why did you come by yourself?" I even made a detour to pick you up and ended up finding nobody there. Shane clearly still didn't know what had happened. He blinked his innocent eyes and looked around. Why isn't everyone seated? I had a minor accident on the way, which is why I'm late. It's my fault, I'll punish myself with 3 drinks. He grinned, as relaxed as if he were simply running a bit late to a casual gathering. He took my hand, looking somewhat puzzled. Why aren't you wearing your wedding dress? You scoundrel. Shane's father slapped him across the face. Shane covered his cheek, his astonishment plain to see. My parents were waiting to see how Shane's family would reprimand him. Shane's mother also laid into him with full force, twisting his ear in a fit of fury. What the hell are you scheming behind the scenes? You're giving up a great girl like Rong and rekindling things with that Ruojia? Shane's sharp, icy gaze swept over his friends. They lowered their heads, signaling for him to look at his phone. The wedding video had already spread everywhere. Combined with Shane taking Ruojia to the hospital on his wedding day, the public outrage had reached its peak. Netizens nowadays are no fools, nobody is praising this tragic epic of love. The scumbag and the rotten woman are being scolded beyond recognition. Shane's face turned a shade paler, his words almost forced through gritted teeth. Who uploaded all this? What about Ruojia's reputation? Laughing as I did, I somehow started to feel like crying. With things blown up this badly, Shane's first instinct was still to worry about Ruojia. Once I believed that love grows over time and lasts forever. Now it seems that nothing can compare to the pure, unattainable love of 18. Ruojia and Shane were separated by their parents. Ruojia's father was a troublemaker who had been in and out of jail many times. On top of that, Ruojia didn't get into college at the time, so Shane's family cut off all contact between him and her. At the wedding, Shane's parents were resentful to see their son mingling with the girl they once despised. They lectured Shane, scolding him while praising me. They forced him to apologize and cut ties. Shane, driven to frustration, spoke recklessly. What exactly will satisfy you? If it weren't for your interference, today should have been me and Ruojia standing here getting married. I've already married Rong as you wanted, so why stir up all this trouble? Can't I just make up for the regret I had with Ruojia 10 years ago? Are you only satisfied after you've driven her to her death? Shane believed that today's commotion was once again stirred up by his parents to force Ruojia out of her position. His eyes were bloodshot as he looked at his parents like they were enemies. My parents couldn't hold back anymore and stepped forward to confront him. Making up for your regret? Then what about my daughter? We entrusted our daughter to you, and is this how you treat her? Aren't you afraid of the consequences for the terrible vows you swore? If not for my mother holding him back, my father's fist would have already landed on Shane. Shane wore a stubborn expression on his face, but his eyes betrayed his guilt. From the day he first visited my parents, he swore he would protect me for a lifetime. If I failed to do so, may the heavens strike me with lightning. I believed him for 8 years, yet all I got in return was betrayal. No one can guarantee that sincerity will last forever. Or perhaps, he never had any for me. I sighed, looking at everyone as if to smooth things over. You all heard it, Shane loves Ruojia. Let's just call off today's wedding here. My breakup with him won't stop him from pursuing true love. Shane's parents panicked, one trying to calm me down while the other scolded Shane. Shane stood there dumbfounded, the earlier determination to go to battle for Ruojia having vanished. He hesitated, looking at my parents as he spoke. Dad, Mom, let me explain, I just ran into Ruojia on the way, and she had a cold and couldn't get a ride. You've already broken up. Don't call us Mom and Dad, it's shortening our lives. My dad angrily cut him off, leaving Shane off balance. He pleaded again, his eyes fixed on me. Rong, we've been together for 8 years, don't you trust me anymore? Ruojia and I really have nothing going on. She's also getting married soon. We just didn't want to carry regrets from back then for the rest of our lives, so we held a wedding, but my heart only belongs to you. This was too much information to take in. Their relationship. I couldn't even look at Shane anymore. Shane's parents nearly fainted. "What on earth are you doing, you wretch?" Ignoring the crowd's gossipy expressions, Shane held my hand tightly, his gaze filled with deep affection. "Wrong, didn't you want to hold our wedding long ago? Why don't we have our ceremony right now?" I pulled my hand away and slapped him hard across the face. These words were even more disgusting than learning he'd had a wedding with his first love. The first time I brought up marriage was 3 years ago. Back then, our careers were stable, and our relationship was going smoothly. But what did Shane say? He believes we're still young and there's no need to rush. I joked about it a few more times later, and each time he looked reluctant. I thought it was because he was under pressure and needed more time to prepare. But for Ruojia, it only took half a year to plan the wedding. Bitterness spread throughout my entire body. It turns out I was only seen as cheap because I wasn't loved. Yet, his friends were frantically trying to persuade us to reconcile. "Sis, look, Shane has already admitted his mistake. On such a happy day, let's not delay things any further, shall we?" "That's right, Shane put a lot of careful planning into this wedding. Let's not waste his sincere efforts." I forced myself to calm down and responded word by word in a questioning tone. "She has a boyfriend, and she knows you're getting married, yet she still went along with this making up for regrets. Just a cold, and the groom had to take her to the hospital? When you were doing all this, didn't it cross your mind how it felt? If you didn't want to marry me, you could have just said so instead of being so utterly repulsive." Shane frowned, his grip on my hand gradually tightening. "Wrong, holding a wedding with her is just like playing house, it's meaningless. I swear, absolutely nothing has happened between us." I pulled my hand away, tears streaming down my face unconsciously. The wedding ceremony I cherished so much was nothing more than a casual game of house in his eyes. His vows were no different from a dog's bark. "Shane, you're telling me nothing happened even after the honeymoon? Who would believe that?" The crowd erupted in disbelief, with our friends' faces turning ashen. It took only a second for Shane to react, angrily demanding to know who had betrayed him. My parents could no longer contain their fury. Relatives on my side began a chorus of condemnation. Shane's face turned pale, and he stumbled over his words in a desperate attempt to explain. But with the facts laid so bare, who would ever believe his lies? I coldly observed him harboring all sorts of suspicions toward his friends, then finally spoke up calmly. "Stop suspecting others, it was me who heard it. I was present at your wedding that day." Shane's face paled once more. His parents also didn't know how to respond. The quiet air was suddenly shattered by the ringing of a phone. Shane anxiously coaxed a few words into the phone, then hung up. In a flash, his previous flustered demeanor vanished, and he grabbed me by the neck to interrogate me. "Wrong. It was you who spread the news, right? Ruojia is about to be called off the engagement now." He was very strong, and I coughed in discomfort. Still, everyone stepped in and pulled him away. My dad stepped forward and gave him several punches. Shane's parents didn't dare say a word, just yanked Shane back to keep him from moving. An inexplicable sense of delight surged within me. Isn't she getting what she deserves by being rejected? And now you've been rejected too, you two can make a perfect pair. Shane was so furious that he tried to lunge at me again. "Ruojia is a girl, you've ruined her reputation. It's really strange how the world works. Someone who eagerly jumps into a relationship to break up a marriage actually cares about their reputation." I tilted my head, watching him stomp around in a rage, then turned to urge my relatives to go eat. "Since you're already here, you might as well eat your fill before leaving." I'm not so naive, especially when it comes to Shane's mother. Once she learned that I was the one who ruined the wedding, her previous apologies to me disappeared without a trace. "Wrong, our family has always treated you well. Why would you want to harm Shane like this? You've completely ruined what could have been a wonderful life together. No matter how kind Shane was to that woman, didn't he still end up marrying you? It's only human for a man to lose his head for a moment. I'll make sure to keep an eye on them for you. In the future, your life will surely be prosperous and joyful." My mother spat fiercely at her. What kind of twisted logic is that? Your own son can't behave properly, yet you still want to ruin my daughter? How can that be causing harm? You've been together for 8 years, can't anything be discussed properly? If you don't get married this time, both nearing 30, how will you ever marry? Well, your son has embarrassed himself publicly online, so maybe you should focus on your own family matters first. In the end, no one at the banquet got to eat. Shane took advantage of the chaos and ran to the hospital to see Ruojia. Naturally, that group of friends left as well. Shane's family was at fault and ended up losing a whole bunch of relatives after being chased away and scolded. Without any backing, Shane's parents didn't dare to keep fighting. They ultimately fled in disgrace. This wedding farce ended in our family's victory. But when I saw all those vicious comments about Shane online, I couldn't help but shed tears. Shane's parents had always treated me well in the past, but when it really mattered, they still resorted to those hurtful words. Meanwhile, Shane was completely devoted to Ruojia. Seeing me being insulted like that, he didn't even speak up in my defense. The closest people couldn't even compare to strangers online. With a sigh, I blocked Shane's parents, who were still trying to reason with me, and left the family group chat. From now on, I don't want to see anything related to them ever again. I thanked everyone who sent their condolences one by one, then packed my things. The departure date was 2 days later. During these 2 days, Shane's family was busy dealing with all the scandals and had no time to harass me. I heard that Ruojia's boyfriend found the hospital and beat them both up. For the first time, netizens sided with the person who did the beating. By the time they finished their conflicts, I was already waiting at the boarding gate. I just didn't expect that Shane would chase after me. His eyes were badly swollen, and he grabbed my wrist without saying a word. "Rong, you've caused such a big mess and now you want to leave without a word?" His first words upon meeting weren't an apology or an attempt to reconcile, just impatient criticism. I thought I was brave enough to face it, but knowing he was doing this for Ruojia always left me feeling a suffocating resentment. After 8 years of dating, he had never treated me like this before. Everyone says Shane has a gentle personality and has always spoken softly to me. But only when people have something to compare do they realize that some things are not exclusive. I forcefully pushed him away, fighting back tears as I retorted. "It was you who made this mess, wasn't it? You secretly held a wedding with someone else behind my back, went on a honeymoon, and then even ran away from it all just to take her to the hospital. Did you really expect me to pretend nothing happened and help cover up your so-called love story?" For a fleeting moment, panic flickered across Shane's angry face. But he quickly composed himself. "I already told you, it was just a ceremony to make up for a regret. It doesn't threaten you in any way. Why do you have to be so jealous?" I felt a strange urge to laugh, even as tears rolled down and tickled the tip of my nose. I thought the man who had shared my pillow for 8 years truly understood me, but in the end, my loyalty to our relationship was brushed aside as mere jealousy. The grip on my wrist tightened once more, Shane's tone leaving no room for refusal. "You're coming to the hospital with me. Ruojia wants to see you. Her mental state isn't good." I knew it all along, he wasn't here specifically to keep me. Yet, at this very moment, his concern for Ruojia made me feel that these 8 years of my life had been utterly worthless. I gazed at him steadily for a long time. The last trace of warmth in my heart had completely vanished. In the end, I still left with Shane. Because he had delayed my flight, the next available flight wouldn't take off for another 6 hours. He didn't ask me where I was going. He drove in a hurry, yet he didn't forget to remind me to apologize properly to Ruojia when the time came. "She attempted suicide yesterday. I hope you can be generous and set aside any personal grudges." I turned my head away, watching the passing scenery outside the window. What great generosity, ruining my wedding, yet still demanding I apologize. When I was dragged into the hospital room, Ruojia's wound, the kind that didn't even need stitches, was prominently displayed in the most conspicuous spot. Her eyes were swollen, and there were bruises at the corners of her mouth. As soon as she spoke, tears streamed down her face. Wrong, I really didn't mean to ruin your relationship. I'm so sorry for causing misunderstandings between you and Shane. I promise I'll never appear before you again. As she spoke, she started banging her head against the wall. Shane quickly stepped forward to block her with his body, his voice tinged with a touch of heartache. What are you doing? No one blames you. But I caused your breakup, and now everyone is cursing at me. Ruojia's sobs grew louder, and she continued to squirm restlessly in Shane's embrace. Shane turned his head and sharply reprimanded me. What are you doing there? Hurry up and come apologize. If it weren't for you, how could Ruojia have ended up like this? I seemed to see Ruojia's triumphant smirk as she curled her lips. Thankfully, I had already processed all that sadness along the way. At that moment, waves of anger surged within me, and I lashed out without holding back. If you want to blame anyone, blame yourselves. One of you can't keep your pants on, the other can't keep your clothes on. If you're so brave, die right here in front of me. Weren't you all high and mighty during the wedding? Go ahead and die now, and I guarantee your tragic love story will be remembered forever. I'm sorry, I'll go die right now. Ruojia went berserk, clawing and scratching at Shane incessantly, yet her body remained completely still. Shane was furious. Wrong. What kind of vicious woman are you? If anything happens to Ruojia, I won't let you get away with it. Oh, if something happens to her, wouldn't you have to die for love to prove your loyalty? The two of them caused an uproar, and Shane was too preoccupied to stop me anymore. After I left, Ruojia updated a post with a picture of Shane accompanying her while she was on an 4 drip. So grateful that old friends still remain by my side. I found it sickening and blocked her along with him. I officially began attending classes under my teacher's guidance. For a full month, I lived quite comfortably. All those entangled affections and grudges seemed like stories from a past life. Until my mother suddenly called. Wrong. There's something I never told you. After you left, Shane came to see us many times. This morning he followed your dad and me and overheard your address. I'm afraid he'll come to bother you. I thought for a moment and shook my head. It's fine, he won't come. City A is almost halfway across the map from where we used to live. Shane is busy comforting his moody white moonlight. At this point, he's probably even about to get married. How would he have the energy to come all this way? I didn't think much of it. That evening, when I went out to take out the trash, Shane grabbed me. Wrong. I turned around in shock, a pair of bloodshot eyes fixed intently on me. A day's journey by carriage left Shane looking rather weathered. 5 years ago, I was sent on a 2-month outdoor sketching trip. With poor signal, Shane worried about me and traveled for 2 days before finally managing to track me down. He looked even more disheveled back then than he does now. My eyes filled with tears as I threw myself into his arms and refused to let go. But this time, I felt like vomiting from the smell of his sweat. No, are you crazy? Running all this way just for my apology? Living a good life with her is better than anything I could say. Shane was left speechless, the words he wanted to say stuck in his mouth. He looked confused and said, I'm not with her. Why didn't you tell me you were going for advanced studies? I seized the chance to shake off his hand, rolling my eyes. Why should I tell you? Shane's voice couldn't help but rise. You're my fiancé. How could you just leave without a word? Do you have any idea how worried I was? Someone glanced over. Realizing his tone was off, Shane quickly lowered his voice again. Wrong, I admit, it was wrong of me to go ahead with the wedding with Ruojia, but you've had your revenge. My parents are now too embarrassed to show their faces outside, and Ruojia hasn't been herself since. Isn't that enough? You've embarrassed my family so badly, but I'm letting it go. Please come back, and we'll pick another auspicious day for our wedding. We can leave the past in the past. I was shocked by his shameless remark and let out a cold laugh. Your embarrassment is of your own making. Aren't you nearly 30? Don't you think about the consequences before you act? Everything you're suffering now is what you deserve. And it's not that you're letting it go, I'm the one who'll hold it against you. I'll always think you're disgusting. Don't call me your fiancé, that's sexual harassment. I had never spoken to him this harshly in all the 8 years. My attention to the wedding gave him the illusion that he always had the upper hand. Shut down by my response, Shane fell silent. When he spoke again, there was a hint of appeasement in his tone. I was wrong, can you not take it personally? With 8 years of feelings between us, everyone knows we're getting married, wouldn't it be awful to let it end like this? I promise you, Ruojia, and I won't do anything inappropriate again. If you're still worried, I'll delete her and cut all contact for good. As he spoke, his words regained a bit more confidence. His earnest and sincere appearance struck me as laughable. After going through so much effort to wait for your white moonlight, aren't you going to marry her? As long as she's willing, you could break off the engagement, couldn't you? Shane grew anxious. What nonsense are you talking? From beginning to end, I only ever intended to marry you. All those words were just to save face. Wrong, I truly never thought about actually marrying Ruojia. You're the only one in my heart. How could our 8-year relationship end so easily? I smiled. If he had said this on the day he could have abandoned Ruojia to come see me, maybe I would have believed it. During those days, I kept thinking, I'll give this relationship one more chance. Countless sweet memories from our relationship flooded my heart. 8 years, you don't simply walk away from it with just a few words. I thought, as long as he came back, it would prove that I mattered more to him. I could act as if none of this ever happened. But now, what do these words count for? Are they like popsicles in winter or quilts in summer? I can also defend myself with mere lip service. Yes, I am the only one in your heart, yet you still stubbornly cling to making up for the regrets of your youth. Haven't 8 years been enough for you to understand me? I refuse to be a backup. When you chose to have your wedding and honeymoon with Ruojia, you should have clearly known that we two would eventually fall apart. There's no need for you to bring up the so-called 8 years again. Shane's face paled inch by inch. He clenched his suitcase tightly and didn't utter a word in rebuttal. I precisely threw the garbage into the trash bin, and as I turned around, he called out to me. Wrong, give me another chance. I just lost my head in the heat of the moment and made a mistake. Everyone deserves a chance to make amends. I've always been so good to you, how can you bear to let go? To this day, all I can think is how cunning Shane is. He believed that with 8 years as a safety net and a relationship that both parents and friends were aware of, he had a fallback. When he agreed with Ruojia, he might have even considered the possibility of getting caught by me. But what does it matter? The wedding is just around the corner, and I'm filled with anticipation. Even if I waver, they would say that Shane treats me so well, and it's just a minor mistake. Understanding a little would make everything fine. He thought of all the ways out for himself, but never considered how I might feel. I think you probably don't want to keep getting roasted by netizens, I apologized with a smile. The teacher was away on business, and I hadn't gone out for 2 days. Mostly, I was afraid of getting inexplicably harassed by Shane again. It wasn't until the kitchen waste started to ferment that I had no choice but to go out. When I got downstairs, I ran into Shane curled up by the green belt. He pulled his hat brim down low, but I still recognized him. Instinctively, I turned to run back, but I was too slow. He seemed completely listless, sweat pouring down his forehead. He stuffed a well-protected bag into my hands. Last time I noticed your tendinitis was acting up, so I bought you some medicine. And you work with a lot of dust when you paint, it's not good for your lungs. Remember to take breaks and get some fresh air. Inside the bag were over 10 different kinds of medicine, even something for treating diarrhea. The cuisine here tastes completely different from what we're used to back home. I'm afraid you might not adapt well. Shane's voice trailed off, and he sheepishly scratched his head. He asked me again, why have you been staying at home these past 2 days? Did something happen? How did you know I've been home for 2 days? Are you stalking me? Shane hastily waved his hand. I wanted to bring you some medicine, but I didn't know exactly which unit you were in, and I'm not familiar with the security guard, so I could only wait downstairs for you to come out. I've been waiting here every day from early morning until night, but you never came down. This is actually very much something Shane would do. After all, when I got sick and was hospitalized, he stayed by my side for 3 nights without rest. He actually knows how to love someone very well, always offering the best he has without holding anything back. But this also means he would treat Ruojia the same way. Just the thought that his love is shared makes me feel nauseated again. I pushed the bag back to him. No need, I bought medicine myself and I'm already better. He wouldn't take it, sweat fell on his lashes, causing a few tears to bead up. Wrong, I was wrong. Mom and Dad are still at home waiting for us. It took me so much effort to find out where you were. Please don't push me away again, okay? I have nowhere else to go. He looked pleading, like a dog wagging its tail. Playing the victim was one of his usual tricks. Those little spats between couples, when brought into the open, take on a whole new interpretation. I retorted coldly, are you trying to play the victim in front of me to win sympathy? Sorry, that trick doesn't work anymore. The more you degrade yourself, the more worthless I find you. Shane froze in place, opening his mouth to argue, just as the phone rang. It was probably Ruojia. I could faintly hear the sound of crying. Shane's brow furrowed more and more. Finally, he couldn't help but interrupt. The doctor said you don't have depression. Why do you always think about suicide? I really can't get away right now, call the caregiver. A very intense, screaming cry came from the other end of the phone. Shane restrained himself, sighed, and hung up the phone. I spoke up, go on, don't really add another life to the count. No, I'm staying here with you. Shane put his phone back in his pocket to show his sincerity. I laughed, if you had refused her earlier, I might have forgiven you, but now, these tricks are useless. You've already been with her for a month, a few more days won't make a difference. Coincidentally, a resident came by, and I slipped into the elevator along with them. Shane didn't chase after me. The next day, when I went out again, there was no sign of him. I don't know if it was his jinxing mouth or not. After breakfast, the spicy peppers upset my stomach, and my chest began to ache. As I crouched by the roadside, my head spun, and everything went blurry. I wanted to call 120, but my muscle memory made me press the emergency contact instead. It's been so long, and I've always forgotten to remove Shane's number. Every time I changed phones, he would carefully set his number as my emergency contact. If something happens, call this number, and I'll be right there by your side. And he really did that. When my stomach pain hit so badly I couldn't move, he ran 3 red lights and arrived even earlier than the ambulance. But this time the phone was answered, by Ruojia. Shane went to buy me breakfast. He's been flying all night and he's exhausted, but he's still worried about me going hungry. The tone of showing off was unmistakable. All the pain in my body eased a bit. Wrong, stop calling. You can't compete with me, Shane can only be mine. I used my last ounce of strength to snap back, may the two of you, scumbag and scumbag woman, be stuck together forever. After a kind-hearted person sent me to the hospital, I was diagnosed with acclimatization issues. After 2 days on and 4 drip, I was mostly fine. Shane never messaged me again. I couldn't help but feel like slapping myself. Habit is truly a terrifying thing. I actually still had thoughts of him lingering in my heart. I rubbed my temples and refocused my energy on my creative work. By the time I had finished a painting I was satisfied with, the clock had already passed 11 at night. Feeling hungry, I walked to the food street and bought some stir-fried rice noodles. While waiting for my ride, I ran into 2 drunk troublemakers. They were holding bottles and insisted on taking me out for a meal. I quickly reached into my pocket, pulled out the pepper spray, and sprayed it in a sweeping motion. The 2 men screamed in pain, cursing and backing away as they retreated. Shane arrived just in time, dragging his suitcase behind him as he hurriedly stepped in front of me, shouting fiercely. The thugs quickly fled. Shane looked at me with a face full of concern and said, I'm sorry, I wish I had come sooner. I shook off the arm he had grabbed, which was now sore from his grip, and retorted, "If you hadn't gotten in the way, I would have been long gone." "Who are you trying to play the hero for?" Shane said to himself, "It's definitely dangerous for a girl like you to come back so late at night. How about I come pick you up every day from now on?" My eyes fell on his suitcase, and I teased, "What? Are you planning to fly back and forth every day? Are you giving up on the company?" I knew he had gone back to see Ruojia, but I didn't expect him to return so quickly. It seemed like he had been provoked by something. Shane said angrily, "I won't go back to see her anymore. I saw the WeChat messages she sent you. She's been lying to me all along. All that talk about depression and wanting to commit suicide was completely fake." After finishing his sentence, Shane looked at me affectionately once more. "Rong, I'll make it up to you this time and stay with you until you decide to come with me." I crossed my arms and looked at him, noticing the stubble on his chin and unwashed hair. If not for his designer clothes, he could easily be mistaken for an unkempt, down-and-out man. He might have rushed back in a hurry, but I felt not the slightest bit of sympathy. "But you believed her from the start, didn't you? Saying you only had me in your heart while rushing back to her." "Shane, stop deceiving yourself. Feeling guilty toward her here, yet missing me over there, aren't you exhausted?" Shane hung his head, arguing, "I just feel guilty toward her. After all, her suicide was because—" He didn't finish the rest of his sentence, nor did he dare to. He glanced at me, then lowered his head again. I sighed, "Don't make excuses for yourself. If you have feelings for her, go be with her properly. Stop putting on an act of deep affection in front of me. I don't need you." "But I need you." Shane looked straight at me. "Rong, we've been together for 8 years. No matter what I do, you're always there. But you still chose to be Ruojia's support first. Because I loved too much, I can't get past this hurdle." Even if Shane now tells me definitively that he has already broken off his relationship with Ruojia. But how could something that has already happened be so easily wiped away? My gaze was too cold, making Shane lose confidence. He cautiously came over to pull me. "Rong, it's very difficult for you to pursue this artistic path. I can support you. And many people don't like artists, and those guys aren't much good either. You hang around with them all the time, only." He broke off in horror before finishing. "Sorry, I didn't mean it." I felt no ripple of emotion in my heart. By this point, whatever genuine thoughts he might express wouldn't surprise me anymore. Because I don't need him to support me, and I don't need to care whether he thinks I'm fooling around. The ride-hailing car had already arrived, so I didn't spare him another glance. Yet he squeezed himself into the car anyway. "Rong, I think we need to find another time to have a proper talk. You're not in the right state of mind right now." His phone rang again. This time, he didn't even hesitate. "Another suicide attempt? Then why don't you go ahead and die right now? How about I come back to collect your corpse, okay?" After finishing, he looked at me as if seeking praise. "Rong," I refused. I closed my eyes and stopped responding to his nonsense. As soon as we arrived at the residential area, I had the security guard stop him. Shane struggled a few times but didn't force his way in. But soon enough, he joined the homeowners group chat. "Hello everyone, I'm a new tenant. Please take care of me." Shane started intercepting me in the neighborhood quite openly. He brought me meals 3 times a day. Sometimes when I left school, I'd see him holding milk tea and flowers. Unaware friends would say I'd found a good boyfriend. I threw them in the trash right in front of him time and time again, but it did nothing to dampen his enthusiasm. He was always eager to share everything he considered beautiful with me. It's as if we were still in the honeymoon phase. The little dog by the roadside, the leaves gently falling. My phone screen was filled with white chat bubbles. This lasted for almost half a month. Shane's parents, along with Ruojia and the company assistant, all came. They pleaded with Shane to return to work immediately. Shane's mother, with tears in her eyes, said, "Rong, if you don't want to be with our Shane, then let him go. Let him return, at the very least so his company doesn't go bankrupt." Ruojia retorted defiantly, Rong, you've won. I'll concede Shane to you. How about you go back with him? Shane stood behind the crowd, seemingly determined to have his way with me. He stepped forward, his voice gentle, Rong, come back with me. A smile curved at the corners of my lips. Shane, your moral coercion makes me sick. I closed the door and let them make a scene outside. The property management quickly came to chase them away, and my world returned to peace. Shane didn't persist anymore. Instead, he started visiting me irregularly on weekends. I stayed in City A for 2 years, and he kept flying back and forth all that time. On the day I returned, he followed closely behind me, step by step. It seemed as if he had countless words stuck in his throat. But I didn't give him the chance. That night, we met at the same banquet. Influential figures in the circle offered to buy my paintings at high prices. It's an honor to finally meet Rong, you're so hard to pin down for an appointment. Shane was beside me, watching as I effortlessly conversed with the influential figures he could barely manage to meet. He will finally understand. I will become an independent painter, not a dependent vine clinging to him for support. It's time to let go of his senseless persistence. 2 years later, a city's most grand contemporary art charity gala was held at the iconic gallery by the Thames. The organizers specially invited the young painter Rong, who had risen to fame in recent years. When she appeared in a simple yet immensely impactful black haute couture gown, the flashbulbs lit up almost simultaneously across the venue. Her Regret series was just auctioned at Christie's London Spring Sale for a 7-figure sum in pounds, making her the most sought-after artist of the evening. Influential figures in the art world vied to take photos with her, well-known gallery owners personally handed her exclusive representation contracts, and BBC Arts reporters lined up for interviews. Standing at the center of the crowd, Rong wore a composed smile and a clear gaze, no longer the girl who once wept bitterly late into the night over a failed relationship. And Shane was standing in the most inconspicuous corner of the banquet hall. He hasn't been doing well these past 2 years. Because of the runaway groom jerk incident that sparked an online war of words, the company lost several major contracts, and its stock price once plummeted by half. The board of directors forced him to give up part of his equity. To calm things down, his parents pulled strings everywhere to apologize and make amends, their hair turning half-gray overnight. Those friends who once egged him on with the fake-it-till-you-make-it mentality had long since blocked him. No one wanted to be associated with a negative headline machine. As for Ruojia, she was first jilted by her ex-boyfriend, then netizens exposed her fabricated medical records for fake depression and fake suicide attempts, leading to a wave of online mockery as the performance of the year. She tried to clear her name by posting a few victim essays, but netizens quickly exposed her with screenshots, landing her at the bottom of the trending list. After that, she disappeared from the public eye. It said she returned to her hometown, married an ordinary office worker through a matchmaking arrangement, and never dared to open a social media account again. Over the past 2 years, Shane has devoted almost all his energy to atonement. He flew to City A countless times, delivering flowers, bringing meals, blocking doors, renting apartments, and even spent half a month sleeping outside Rong's residential building. Every time Rong gave a cold refusal, he would slink away as if his bones had been sucked out, only to reappear promptly the next weekend. Until one day, he finally broke down. Ruojia called him after another suicide attempt, and he immediately shouted into the phone. "Go ahead and die if you want, just stop disgusting me." Then he blocked her for good. At that moment, he thought he had finally woken up and could win back Rong's forgiveness. Unfortunately, it was too late. Tonight's banquet, he had forced his way in as a guest of a business partner. He watched Rong being the center of attention from afar. Several times he tried to approach, only to be politely but firmly kept 3 meters away by security. Rong's assistant had long since put his name on the no admittance list. The auction segment has begun. Rong personally took the stage and donated the grand finale piece of the Regret series, Ashes. The inspiration for this painting came from those 8 years of betrayal. In the painting, a woman stands amidst the ruins of a burning wedding dress, with shattered vows turned to ashes behind her, while boundless dawn stretches out before her. The host announced the starting bid, £500,000. The scene instantly erupted in excitement. Bidding paddles rose one after another, quickly breaking through £1 million. Shane stood in the corner, his fingers gripping the wine glass so tightly his knuckles turned white. He recognized the details in the painting. The burning wedding dress was the exact style he had personally chosen back then, that shattered diamond ring was the very one he had used to propose. In the end, the painting was claimed by a mysterious buyer for an astonishing price of £2,800,000. The host announced with a smile, "This anonymous buyer has an additional request. He hopes Miss Rong can personally write a phrase on the painting as a permanent keepsake." Rong took the pen and wrote at the bottom right corner of the painting. "To the 8 years I wasted, thank you for teaching me how expensive regret can be." Thunderous applause erupted throughout the venue. Shane's wine glass shattered in his hand with a sharp crack, blood dripping from his fingers onto the expensive carpet, unnoticed by anyone. The banquet ended, and Rong was surrounded as she walked toward the exit. Shane finally couldn't hold back and rushed over, his voice hoarse, "Rong, congratulations." Rong stopped and looked at him directly for the first time. Her gaze was as calm as deep water, with no hatred, no love. "Shane," she said softly, "I told you long ago that what you fear most isn't losing me, but the day when I'll live a better life than you. Now, you've seen it." She turned and walked away, the sound of her high heels sharp and resolute. Shane stood frozen in place, as if all the strength had drained from him. Outside, the night breeze of London carried the damp chill of the Thames. Rong looked up at the sky, a truly relaxed smile curling at the corners of her lips. From now on, that man's shadow would never appear on her canvas again. Her future belonged solely to herself.